This episode of Harvey Brownstone Interviews is brought to you by the Harvey Brownstone Talk Show Blend Coffee, available at hollywoodblends.com. Everyone's saying it's the best coffee they've ever tasted. Why not give it a try and see for yourself?
Hello, everyone. I'm Harvey Brownstone, and today's guest is a highly acclaimed and popular actress, producer, and best-selling author who is perhaps best remembered for her portrayal of Elaine Nardo in the hit TV show Taxi, for which she received 5 Golden Globe Award nominations for Best Supporting Actress. She also played Burt Reynolds' wife, Ava Newton, on Evening Shade, and she is, of course, beloved in her role as Aida in over 20 Aurora Teagarden Mystery movies on the Hallmark Plus channel, including her 2 recently released movies, A Lesson in Murder and Death at the Diner. But her body of work extends far beyond those memorable roles. She's appeared in numerous shows on Broadway, including the original cast of Grease, as well as Over Here, Pal Joey, Chicago, and The Tale of the Allergist's Wife. Her other stage work includes Annie Get Your Gun, The Mad Woman of the West, The Journals of Adam and Eve, and Noises Off. Her feature film credits include Blood Brothers, Hammett, The Man Who Loved Women, Johnny Dangerously, Chains of Gold, Imperfections, Life with Dog, The Mimic, and LA Story, for which she was nominated for an American Comedy Award for Funniest Supporting Actress in a Motion Picture. On TV, she's appeared in a whole slew of movies and miniseries, including Dream House, Love with a Perfect Stranger, Grand Larceny, Lady Killers, My Son is Innocent, Titanic, The Governor's Wife, Good Behavior, A Kismet Christmas, and many more. And she's guest starred in dozens of great TV series, including Alfred Hitchcock Presents, The Tracy Ullman Show, Sybil, Providence, ER, Grey's Anatomy, and many, many more. And she co-starred in an episode of Great Performances called Grown Ups, for which she was nominated for a Cable Ace Award for Best Actress. Our guest is also a New York Times best-selling author of 10 wonderful books. My favorites are By All Means Keep on Moving, Marilu Henner's Total Health Makeover, I Refuse to Raise a Brat, Party Hardy, Hot, Sexy, Have a Blast Food and Fun All Year Round, Total Memory Makeover, Uncover Your Past, Take Charge of Your Future, and her most recent book, which I believe everyone needs to read, Changing Normal, How I Helped My Husband Beat Cancer, which is an absolute revelation. I am delighted to welcome the brilliant Marilu Henner to our show. Marilu, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. What an introduction. Wow. And it's so funny because a lot of times people don't mention the American Comedy Award nomination. And I'm so proud of that because I loved that character so much. The character of Trudy, Steve Martin's girlfriend in LA Story.
Well, I loved it too. And of course, I had to mention it. Now, I want to start by mentioning that you played Marty, one of the pink ladies on Broadway in Grease. We've had a lot of Grease alumni on the show, including Adrienne Barbeau, Adrian Zmed, even the director Tom Moore, as well as the director of the movie, Randall Kleiser. What was your favorite moment from that show?
My family had a dancing school in our backyard. We also had a beauty shop in our kitchen, art class. There's all kinds of things going on. We were the cultural center of my neighborhood in Chicago. So we all got involved in community theater. When I was 15 years old, I did a production of The Boyfriend that was very popular in Chicago, great big hit. 2 years later, one of the guys I met from that production called me and he said, Henner, I've written a show, may never get off the ground. We're going to perform it in a converted trolley barn. I wrote it about the kids I went to high school with. I want you to play one of the parts. And it's called Grease. So long before Grease, the musical, Grease, the movie, even before Grease on Ice, I did the original production in Chicago. The part of Marty was written for me. I was the first person to ever sing Freddie, My Love, which is not shown in the movie. The movie was so different because the movie was not the ensemble that the play was. We were a big hit. They wanted some of the people to come and audition in New York. I was at the University of Chicago on 4 scholarships, and I didn't think it was going to be a hit, so I didn't go. And then time passed, and my friend Jim Jacobs called and said, you have to come to New York today. We're starting the national company tomorrow. I saved your part for you. You have to come, but you have to come and audition. So I reluctantly, but I figured, okay, I'll come. I got the parts. And I went to the first rehearsal the next day and met Jeff Conaway playing Danny Zuko, and met John Travolta playing Duty, and Jerry Zaks playing Kaniki. Rehearsing with us for the London company was Richard Gere. And I never looked back. It was like just something that I did. So I went on the road for a year. And then Grease was the kind of thing that once you were in the Grease family, you could go in and out of it when you, instead of going on unemployment in between jobs, you'd go back to Grease. Well, some of us could. But anyway, so yeah. So when you ask me for my favorite moment, for someone who's got the memory I do, it's hard to say, my favorite moment of being in Grease. But I love doing the road company because we were all young. I was 20. It was an experience that was pretty amazing. And I'm friends with so many of the people till this day.
I love that you have that memory, and I'm going to be asking you about that in a few minutes. But first, of course, I have to ask you about Taxi, which is widely considered to be one of the greatest TV series of all time. 34 Emmy nominations. It won 18 Emmy Awards. You got 5 Golden Globe Award nominations. And what's amazing to me, and I got this from the casting director, Joel Thurm, who was on our show last year, is that the original plan for the role of Elaine was to have an older actress, but they all fell in love with you, even though you were supposed to be a regular on Paper Chase. Isn't that amazing?
It was crazy. It was like one of those fate things that happens that you just cannot believe. I was actually on vacation in Rio when they wanted me to do Paper Chase, and I had a contract with CBS. So they said, well, you have to honor your contract. I said, I haven't read the script and I'm on vacation, and can I do it as a guest star? Because I really didn't want to commit to it. I had, they were looking for a pilot for me. And so they said, yeah, well, you can do it as a guest star. I thought, oh, shoot, I have to come home. So I came home from my trip and did it. And then when they tested it, I tested higher than anybody else. And so it was kind of strange. And they offered me all this money, but at the same time, I was auditioning for Taxi. So it was easy for my agents to say, hey, look, you're going to lose her, make a decision. Because they were like, oh, she's so young. We want her to have a 16-year-old daughter. I was 25 at the time. And Joel kept saying, no, I'm telling you, this is the girl. You believe her as someone aspiring to the art world, but she can hold her own with the guys. She's like a guy's girl. And, give her 2 little kids. So they said, otherwise you're going to lose her. Because at one point they even said, well, maybe we could give her another part, like further down the road. And they went, okay, well, you're going to lose her. And so thank God for Paper Chase. And they said, no, okay, we'll change the character of Elaine because we do love her. And I owe so much to Joel Thurm as a result of that.
Well, he's become a dear friend and he absolutely adores you.
Oh, I adore him.
I've heard you say, Marilu, in other interviews that in your opinion, out of everyone in that cast, the most indispensable actor was Danny DeVito. Why do you feel that way?
Oh my gosh, he was totally original. I mean, and he ran the garage, he was the very first episode. And it's funny because Danny was only supposed to be 7 out of 13, but he was so different. And his audition, he's the famous audition story for Danny DeVito. He was, I guess, down to his last $10 or something, his last clean shirt, his last unemployment check. And he walked in, and he always describes it he was like a little, nervous, but he had a room full of people. And he was like, all right, before I begin, I have a question. Who wrote this shit? And he threw the paper on the floor, and it was like, that's our Louis. So when he came out of that cage the first time as the, dispatcher, he came out and it was like, Riga, 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 to Judd Hirsch's character. A star was born, and he was so indispensable, and he's so sexy and funny and such a brilliant actor. And you could give him anything to do, and he would have that internal pathos. Like the audiences loved him and they loved to hate him. So he was just brilliant. We just all talked to each other. The Taxi cast is crazy close. We text. We have a text chain. Every day we are on that text chain talking to each other. Every day. No, seriously, every day. And so yesterday was Danny's birthday. So we were all on wishing him happy birthday, and he was telling us about his day. And it's crazy. It's crazy. We're so ridiculously close. And we started doing Zooms during the pandemic. So we've done 23 so far. Every 2 months we do one.
Well, I think it's wonderful that you are all such good friends. And I happen to believe that the on-screen chemistry among all the cast members of Taxi, it was so magical because you were all friends with each other in real life, don't you think?
Oh, totally. No. I think they wrote great characters, and then they happened to cast actors that not only loved their parts but lived their parts, became their parts in so many ways. And it was just, I mean, our cast, I always say, what's one of the most obvious reasons why we were so close? First of all, the Paramount lot at that time was insane because it was Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley, Bosom Buddies, Mork and Mindy, Working Stiffs. So, Michael Keaton and Tom Hanks and Jim Belushi. I mean, Jim Belushi and John Belushi would come and visit because he and Danny were good friends, and Ron Howard and of course, Robin Williams. They were all around. Henry Winkler, all of them. And every Friday, the Taxi cast had a party. We'd finish the show. We'd start at 7:30. Jimmy Burrows directed us. By 9:15, we were popping champagne. It was such a well-oiled machine by the time we got to Friday nights that we would go through it in less than 2 hours and start the party. So I would go around as the girl, and plus, I was in my family, I was always banker in Monopoly. I was always that type. So I'd get like a playlist from people, I'd get food requests, and I'd like organize and collect money from the guys, and we had a party every single show. We had 112 shows, we did 112 parties.
That's just amazing. Now, I have to tell you, there's a 2-part episode in season 2 called Shut It Down.
That's my favorite.
Yeah, that's the scene where you are elected shop steward in a labor dispute. You have to negotiate with Louis. Danny DeVito was so funny. I've always wanted to ask you, Marilu, how did you keep a straight face in your scene
you've
with
done
him?
it. I had to wear painful. He is such a little devil, Danny, that every time we rehearsed that scene, he would add something to it. He would just constantly add something to it. And I don't know if you remember, one of the lines was, and within the earshot of like at least two other people, you must call me Stallion. And everything is, I didn't want to do it. Anyway, he would, on the word Stallion, he would lift his head, or he added a snort. Then he did a thing with his foot. He would not I could not stop laughing. Every time we did the scene, I just broke it. And I thought, I can't do this. I can't do this in front of the audience. So I wore painful shoes to bed the night before, just so I would have a stomach ache. And I had coats and stuff because it was a winter scene, and I wore a lot of coats for the scene. So I just gave myself a horrible stomach ache through that whole shoot just to keep myself from laughing.
You mean when you wear painful shoes, it affects your stomach?
Oh, of course. Oh my gosh, in a second. Why do you think Adele takes her shoes off all the time? You can't sing, you don't have a core, a center, it throws you off. So I purposely wanted to be thrown off. So I wore painful shoes to bed, boots, just to keep from laughing at Danny's brilliance.
Okay, that's good advice. I have to mention in part 2 of that episode, Shut It Down, you do the tango with Danny. There's that famous kiss and the rolling around on the floor. Right. You've kissed a lot of very, very sexy actors over the years. So where does Danny DeVito rank on your list?
Danny DeVito is one of the sexiest men I've ever met in my entire life. You can't be a movie star of his stature without having that kind of extra something. And you could tell he just loves women. You feel, Danny knows how to I adore him. And I always tell everybody that he's the sexiest guy that was on Taxi. And I don't know firsthand, but I feel like, you could just tell him. Danny's like delicious. He's like Yoda, but sexy.
Well, you're pretty sexy yourself. In fact, you managed to do the impossible in the workplace, at least in my opinion. You dated both Tony Danza and Judd Hirsch while you were all working together. You all remained friends, even after breaking up, which is almost unheard of. How did you all remain so mature and so civilized?
I'm just that kind of person. I stay close to everybody that I've ever had a relationship with, that was ever a boyfriend. And I don't know, once you love somebody and share your life with them, I don't want to lose them, even if it's not going to be forever in terms of a romantic relationship. And we're just all sane, good, wonderful people who loved our show, loved our characters, and got along. So
that takes a lot of maturity. Now, in 1984, you co-starred in Cannonball Run II with the most amazing cast: Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., Shirley MacLaine, Sid Caesar, Burt Reynolds, Dom DeLuise, Tim Conway. That's just a few. I know the movie got terrible reviews, but did you have fun making it?
We had so much fun. We shot it in Tucson, and it was 117 degrees some of the days. So Shirley and I had to be in hair and makeup at 2 o'clock in the morning. And we start shooting at like, we'd drive an hour and change out to the desert. And then we'd start shooting at like 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, and pull the plug at 1. So we had the afternoon because it was so hot. So everybody would hang out at the pool and we'd watch dailies at like 6 o'clock, and everybody ate together and hung out together. And it was a blast. I'm so sad that I didn't have a cell phone. We didn't have cell phones taking videos at the time, because I would have loved to have seen Sammy Davis Jr. and me dancing, because we danced all the time.
That would be so sweet. Now, you played Burt Reynolds' wife in Evening Shade. As you know, the show was still getting huge ratings when it was canceled after season 4. Was the decision to cancel the show made by CBS, or was it made by Burt Reynolds?
No, it was pretty much CBS. I think it was an expensive cast. And I think that there were just, different things going on. And I think that like a regime change and things like that. So, yeah, I mean, it was sad.
Well, when we had Lonnie Anderson on the show, she felt that very adversarial divorce that they were going through, and the stress that it caused on Burt really affected his work. Did you feel that way?
I didn't feel it affected his work. It might have affected his sense of, being, rather than, he was always very professional, and he always delivered a great performance, and direction. And I think that maybe there, but it wasn't just Lonnie. It was stuff with Linda Bloodworth, and little things would go on, and and also some of the ratings did slip. So, and when you have, it's a business decision, and I don't think it's ever totally one thing.
You co-starred with Michael Caine and Carol Burnett in Noise Is Off. That must have been amazing to work with those two legends.
It was fantastic. We had such a blast, because I did the play recently again. I mean, I learned the play. We had to learn the play because it's like a Swiss watch. So everything has to fit together. So I did it recently at Bucks County this past summer, a few months ago. But doing the movie was really an experience, because every day working with Michael, who's a genius, working with Carol, a genius. And it was Christopher Reeve and John Ritter, Denholm Elliott, Julie Haggerty, Mark Lynn Baker, Nicolette Sheridan. We had a blast. It was just the group of us, nobody else. And you were constantly working. It was pretty crazy and so physical. It's such a physical feat, that show. But
yeah, it really is. It was a great movie. Now, Marilu, I don't know how much you know about me, but I'm a retired criminal and family court judge. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that. That's cool.
Well, the reason I mention that is because of a very important TV movie you made in 1995, the same year I became a judge, called Fight for Justice, the Nancy Conn Story.
Right.
Which, for the benefit of our viewers, it's the true story of a woman whose life was put in jeopardy after the man who stalked her was released from jail on parole. That movie dealt with the extremely important issue of legislative reform to protect victims of crime when granting parole to violent criminals. And you were portraying a real person in that movie. How did you prepare for that role?
Well, I got to meet her, so I got to ask her a bazillion questions, which was great. And she was amazing. And it was such a, like a violent sort of situation, the whole thing, being stalked and then being, kidnapped. And I mean, it was like she was raped, beaten, thrown in the trunk of a car, drowned, thrown off the side of a hill. And we shot it in Canada. And I was 4 months pregnant with my son, Joey, at the time. And I was glad that they did all the scenes where I was in a slip early on, because by the time I got to the hospital scenes, I was already starting to show. And people were being very careful with me. But I have to tell you, I mean, it was such an important piece. I'm so proud of the work that we did. I think Nancy Conn is just an extraordinary human being. But I loved the director. I loved my castmates. I just loved that experience so much. And I'm glad. It's great when you have the gravitas of a piece, but you have the comfort and the camaraderie that we all had on set. It was pretty special.
A very, very special movie. In 1996, you played Molly Brown in the TV miniseries Titanic. Now, she's been portrayed by a lot of actresses: Thelma Ritter, Cloris Leachman, Kathy Bates, and of course, Debbie Reynolds in The Unsinkable Molly Brown. Were you influenced by any of those performances?
I was mostly influenced because I'm a real researcher. I guess it's the University of Chicago girl in me. And so I did a lot of, so I actually, and they let me add her dialogue that I had picked up from her. I read her book. I got every bit of information from her place in Denver. And, you know, and I say this line all the time to mean so many different things in my life. She actually said, because if you know anything about the Titanic, only the men were supposed to row. So they had like two rowers per lifeboat. And Molly Brown, she wanted to get out of there. And she was like, I'm not going to die on some rotten little boat, you know, and she's the one who got the women to row as well. And that's why a lot of people were saved as a result of her forethought and her, you know, her like moxie. And so that wasn't in the script. And they said, okay, you can say that. There were so many lines they let me put in. And also just being able to work with George C. Scott and Eva Marie Saint, you know, and Catherine Zeta-Jones, which is what brought her to America and was her first big job. And Peter Gallagher and I knew each other from the Grease days. And Roger Rees was just so incredible. And, you know, just so many. And Tim Curry, oh my God, my favorite. I mean, he was just incredible. So we had a great time. That was another very happy set. And it was fun to wear those costumes, of course, and do the research. I love research.
I love the fact that your research actually ended up affecting the script.
Yeah, it did. Oh, Joyce Eliason, who wrote the script, she was like, sure, you know, say anything, you know, give me anything that you know came from Molly, because there were, you know, quite a few lines that I said that were verbatim what she had said in the situation.
That's very cool. Now, you also co-starred in a TV movie in the year 2000 called Rocket's Red Glare with my dear friend Robert Wagner. He's appeared on our show.
Oh,
I adore RJ. What was he like to work with?
he was so special. And so he is such a movie star, you know, and I've got a lot of energy. So I'm always having to contain it for the cameras. And I always feel like, oh, am I doing too much? And he does barely anything. But what jumps off the screen at you is like, whoa, movie star. And I kept saying, well, wait a minute, do I get to kiss Robert Wagner? Oh, no, he's playing my father? Damn, you know. So, yeah, but he was great. He was great to work with. We ran into each other not that long ago, and he's just fabulous.
He's a wonderful, wonderful guy. And if they ever need a photograph in the dictionary next to the word charisma or magnetism, it will be RJ. It will be RJ. Now, you know, of course, I have to ask you, you appeared as a contestant in season 7 and 13 of The Apprentice.
Yes.
What was that experience like?
Oh, it was, well, first of all, you know, I was a big fan of the show. So when they asked me to do it, I thought, sure, why not? And the first time I was in the boardroom, it was pretty amazing. And I made a lot of money from my, you know, from my charities. And the fun of it was you use all of your brain cells and you use all of your energy. I think the first time was really hard because we had no day off. We had one day off for the New York Marathon. They got smart for the second go round because people were dropping like flies. It was like triage, you know, paramedics and everything else. So the second time was much easier because they spaced it and they gave us a day off. Every 6 days you'd have a day off, you know, so that was easier. But it was, I liked it because I was so, you get so invested in the tasks and it separates people in terms of the people who are used to having assistants and their managers and their agents doing it, and the people who are like, well, what do I have to do next? So I had a blast.
You were also a contestant on season 23 of Dancing with the Stars, 2016. You danced with Derek Huff. You made it to the top 6, which is pretty amazing. Did you like that experience?
I did. It was, you know, it's hard and everything else. And I think, I was just talking about this the other day, that Derek and I were kind of an interesting match because he constantly changes things. But because of my memory, I would remember the first thing he put in to my brain and my body, and I'd go and do it, and he'd be like, well, what's that? And I'd say, oh, yeah, that was last Tuesday's choreography, you know, because he was constantly changing it. So that's not how I'm used to working. So there was like a little difference there, but he was great. And he smelled great. And I was so happy that he and Haley, you know, stayed together because they were a beautiful couple.
Well, you did really well to get to the top six. That's not easy. At least when we watch on TV, it looks really hard.
It's very hard. Well, you don't get a day off. So that's the other thing. But you become so, and yeah, and it was challenging but fun. And I grew up except it's very different dancing than what I grew up with because I did tap and ballet and, just the whole hold and, being in hold for the other dances like waltz and quick step and, all of that. It's very different.
Now, I have to tell you, when I was doing my research, I was amazed by how many times you've appeared on talk shows. Just listen to this. You've appeared on the Johnny Carson Show 17 times. You were on the David Letterman Show 23 times. You've been on Daily Blast Live 15 times. You've been on the Today Show 12 times. You've been on The View 4 times. You were on the Mike Douglas Show, the Daily Show, the Conan O'Brien Show, and the Rosie O'Donnell Show 3 times each. And I haven't even mentioned all the other talk shows like Howard Stern or Jimmy Fallon or Bill Maher, where you only appeared once or twice. So first of all, because I'm a talk show junkie, I have to ask you, Marilu, who was your favorite interviewer?
Who was my favorite? I love Dave Letterman. I mean, Jay's a friend. I love him. We have a wonderful chemistry because we've known each other a long time. But there's something about David Letterman is so in present time when you are with him that no matter what you talked about, maybe in a pre-interview or whatever, you just ride the wave. He was incredible. I always had a great time on his show.
Well, you hosted your own daytime talk show back in 1994. Did you like being an interviewer?
Oh, I love it. I'm curious about people all the time. I don't know, maybe it's the middle child in me or something, but I always feel like I would love to, when I go to a party or something, I might swizzle around, but usually I end up finding somebody that I can't wait to really talk to and find out a lot about. So,
and the thing about you is you're going to remember it.
I'm going to remember it.
I understand that you recently sold a story idea to Hallmark based on your own family, you being the middle child. Can you tell us anything about the story?
Nope, I can't tell you anything yet. And it's
Well,
not about growing up. No, but it's great. It's great.
It's very exciting because of all the books you've written, there's not a lot of stories about your growing up.
The Hallmark movie's not about then, it's more about now. Okay.
So let me ask you about your memory. In 2010 and 2014, you appeared on 60 Minutes to talk about this amazing gift you have known as highly superior autobiographical memory, which is the extremely rare ability to vividly remember exact details of pretty much every event in your life. Can that ability sometimes be a burden in your life?
People ask me 5 questions. Is it a blessing or a curse? What I always say is that it's a blessing for me always. It's such a tremendous gift I feel I have. And it's only a curse for my husband, which is probably why I'm on my 3rd and final. I make jokes about that. And they ask if it has anything to do with lines, memorizing lines. And I say that's 2-dimensional. That's photographic memory. Mine is more experiential because I'll remember when I read the script, what I was wearing, what the weather was like, what in the script reminded me, what the character's life reminded me of in my own life. People will always say, well, what about the bad memories? And I always say, well, memory is tied to adrenaline. So you are going to remember the highs and the lows. You're going to remember a first kiss, a promotion, a wedding, a birth of a baby, graduating. You're also going to remember the lows, being embarrassed, having your heart broken, death of a parent or someone close to you. I get to remember all those little middle of the road kind of our town moments. And that's what I'm hoping to help other people with, because everything you've been through is on your emotional hard drive. It makes you behave in certain ways. You don't even know why sometimes. You walk into a room and go like, why does this smell reminds me of my grandmother's, or, oh my gosh, that song takes me back to high school. You're constantly retrieving memories, but we just happen to have an extraordinary retrieval system, people with H sound. So that's why I'm always out to help people, not to show off my memory. That's been proven. It's more to help people with their memories.
Well, I really like being able to forget unpleasant experiences in my life. Can you make yourself forget bad things that have happened to you?
I don't want to. It's like I think if you don't process bad memories, they become emotional boogeymen and they affect you in ways that are destructive after a while, or definitely take something out of you. It's like, the more you process them, the more it's like, watching a horror movie over and over again. After a while, you go like, oh, that crazy person's going to come out of the closet, or there's going to be somebody who stalks me, or, there's like, oh, there's a, guillotine up ahead. I mean, I'm making things up, what I'm, the monster up ahead, and after a while you go like, the craft service table was probably around the corner, things like that. I mean, it's just, you process through bad memories so that they don't continue to scare you.
But part of processing them, at least for me, is to forget them, to let them go.
Well, they're in you. They're there. So whatever works for you, I don't make any judgments on whatever works for other people. But also, don't forget, as an actress, oh my gosh, you are looking to hold on to whatever memories you have. It's like when I would go to, an acting class, and we were doing a sense memory exercise where you bring in either an object or a photograph or a piece of music or whatever, anything. And I would like get there immediately. People would say, oh my gosh, how did you get there so quickly? And I'd think like, well, how are you not? And I never realized how unique my memory was until I was much older.
About 10 years ago, you co-produced a TV series called Unforgettable about a police detective who has that same gift you have and uses her ability to solve crimes. Was that show realistic from your perspective?
It was great because they asked me to read the scripts ahead of time, and I would find little things like the two characters, for example, they had a relationship before, and so they were talking about some party that happened, on July 17th of 1999. And they talked about being at this party and being flirty and all this. And I said, okay, just so you know, that was the weekend JFK Jr.'s plane went down. So that would be on the news constantly. People at the party would be talking about that. And somebody with Carrie's memory, which is like my memory, she would refer to that within the context of talking about the party. And they were like, oh, we better take that out. We'll put it on a different weekend. I was constantly finding little things because of my own experience that maybe Carrie would do flashing back or in the present or whatever. Yeah.
So you've got 2 new movies on the Hallmark Channel right now. Can you tell us anything about them?
Oh, well, first of all, I've been doing the Aurora Teagarden series for 10 years. It's funny, when I came home from shooting the first one, my niece was born that night, and she just celebrated her 10th birthday a couple of days ago. So I've been doing it for 10 years, 21 movies where I play Aida. And the first 18 were with Candace Cameron Bure, and she and I even like quarantined together, and we like roomed together. We had a blast. And then then we did the next 3. So 19, 20, and 21 were with Skylar Samuels, and it was like a reboot, but it was a prequel. And it's been so incredible playing the same character, but earlier in her life, my character's life, because she's kind of, in the original series, my character Aida is kind of impervious and very on top of things and dresses a certain way and always put together. And this is 10 years earlier. So she's at a shakier time in her life. She's just kind of been divorced, and she's trying to figure things out and taking temp jobs. And it's so fun I've never done a prequel to a character before. So I just love it. And the mysteries are unbelievable. I'm so excited. I think these last 3 that we just did that are now on Hallmark Plus, I think they're 3 of the best that we've done in the entire series by far.
Will you be doing more, do you think?
I hope so. I hope everybody signs up for Hallmark Plus, because it's very special. And Skylar Samuels is incredible, and our director, Jessica Harmon, is fantastic. So,
and you've done a lot of Christmas movies too.
Yes, 6. I've done 31 Hallmark movies altogether. I hold the record now for the most mysteries because I've done 21. But yeah, 6 Christmas movies.
If they were to turn the Aurora Teagarden Mysteries into a series, would you be up for that?
Well, it is kind of a series. It's just a 2-hour movie series. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, to get all the characters and all of the mystery and the yarn figured out, I think you almost need to do it as a movie. But I would definitely do it as a series. I'd do anything for Hallmark. I love them.
Well, it's obvious that they love you too, and so do we.
Thank you.
Well, in my introduction, I mentioned all the books you've written. I want to ask you, Marilu, about a few of them, starting with Changing Normal, How I Helped My Husband Beat Cancer, which you co-wrote with your husband, Michael Brown. You shared your strategy for defeating Michael's cancer of the bladder and the lungs. That book came out in 2016, 8 years ago. So first of all, how is Michael doing?
Oh my God, he's incredible. He's like so strong and healthy. And I'm sorry, he's in Korea right now because he's a calendar publisher, the number one calendar publisher in the world, Brown Chalk Publishers. So he goes there because there a lot of printing is done there, and so he spends a lot of time all over the world. Otherwise, I bring him out like a show pony and say, "Hey, show him how healthy you look." He looks amazing. It is such a miracle how much he changed his health around, how the cancer has been totally in remission almost 21 years now. Yeah, November it'll be 21 years. Oh, this is November. Later this week.
Well, your book teaches us to take responsibility for our lives, to search for the causes of our illnesses, to address them directly. Michael got rid of his cancer without chemotherapy or radiation, which is nothing short of a miracle. So I want to ask you, in the 8 years since the book came out, have you and Michael learned even more about non-traditional medicine?
Well, he's very vigilant about the supplementation and the everything from infrared saunas to he gets immunotherapy once in a while, every like year, just as a booster. He, BCG, he gets that. He's very good about being very vigilant about the way he eats and exercises and takes care of himself. And, we have quite a beautiful relationship too, which I think is helpful as well.
Oh, for sure. The other book of yours that really fascinated me, because I am a retired family court judge who's dealt with a lot of parenting issues, is I Refuse to Raise a Brat, which you co-wrote with a renowned psychologist. What inspired you to write that book?
Well, it's so funny because I had children, and Nikki was like like a little baby, but I could tell that he was expecting certain things even as a baby, like a little over a year old. And I said, I feel like he's on to me and he's going to like wrap me around his finger or something like that. And I said, I don't want him to have a bratty quality. I refuse to raise a brat. She said, let's write a book together called, that's a great title. Let's write a book together. So I talked about her parenting things, and everything she predicted has been coming true. The fact that so many parents so dote on the kids that they become the arms and the legs and the brain, and they do everything. And the child has no sense of the world. And then they send them out into the world. And then the kid wonders why the world doesn't treat them a certain way or doesn't. And they turn on the parents as a result because they don't have those coping skills. They don't have frustration tolerance. They don't have coping skills. And, I always say that, my boys are working a lot. They're doing very well. And I said that because they're not brats, and you can tell the kids who are brats and the kids who aren't. They're kids who were carried at 8 years old every day to their classroom. And I'd see this and I go, down the line, this is going to be a problem. Or the mom who was always sliding down the slide and didn't let the child interact with other children, and it's just, I feel like maybe because I grew up one of 6 kids, so there was a lot of benign neglect, especially for a middle child. And it's not that I neglected my kids at all. I was very hands-on and got involved with them. But a good parent has a good combination of what I call sleepy, spunky, and spooky. You have to have a little bit of both. You have to have a little bit of all three in the right balance to have your kids feel like they can grow up and be confident. And I wasn't the kind of mother that if my son, maybe the first time, I forgot my homework at home. It's like, okay, fine. Second time, sorry, I'm not driving it to school. There's got to be cause and effect, understanding of consequences, understanding, contributing to a whole, to a family. My boys, I wanted to teach them all the practical stuff, how to load a dishwasher, how to cook, how to do their laundry, how to clean their rooms, and it was like, I wanted them to know that they were part of a bigger thing than just 2 little Hollywood brats in California. So
wow, what you're talking about is kids that are raised with such a sense of entitlement.
Yeah.
And now that your kids are all grown up, have they told you what they think of the book?
Oh yeah, they're so happy. Oh yeah, that's in my mom's brat book. But also I'm helping my brother a little bit help his children, raised his children who are right now. His daughter just turned 10, his son just turned 12, and I get to see them all the time. And when they were very little, my boys would say, "Oh my gosh, I feel like Scrooge looking through the window, looking at the ghost of Christmas past, because I see you doing some of the same things with them." We were all together during the pandemic, and everybody in this house, there were 7 of us, everyone had to do something every day for the good of other people. So my niece learned how to, I guess she was 6 years old at the time. She learned how to set a mean table. Actually, she was 5 when the pandemic started. She learned how to set a table. She learned how to load a dishwasher. My nephew, who was 7 at the time, he learned how to cook. You give kids responsibilities and then they live up to them and you trust them. And it's like, "Oh, what does this mean?" Or was it, "Okay, let's look this up together. What can you do this for me?" And say, "Have you tried doing it? Why don't you try it this?" So you let them, it's giving them the constant fishing pole so that they know how to fish.
It sure is. And I tell you, I have given away your book, I Refuse to Raise a Brat, more times than you can ever imagine to parents. A lot of your books deal with living a healthy lifestyle, eating properly. I'm sure some of that concern about good health stems from the fact that tragically you lost both of your parents in their 50s. But when you look around and you see the epidemic of obesity in this country, including child obesity, what do you want to say to people who just don't seem to care about their health?
Well, I don't know that you look at kids and it's not that they don't care about their health. They just haven't been taught how to care about their health. Also, the food industry is so, sometimes the least healthy food is the most expensive. I contributed to the food pyramid in 2004 and then 2014 for the 2005 and the 2015. And I begged them to put water, hydration on the food pyramid, and they finally have. And I also, felt like certain like sugar and things should come with the health robber label. Things have to be labeled more accurately. The chemicals and the just what we're feeding our children. It's so unfair. You take a little 40 to 80 pound body, young kids, and feed them all the crap we're feeding them with dyes and chemicals and sugar and artificial things. And then you expect them to sit still in school. And when they can't, you say, "Oh, they have ADD and ADHD, so let's give them drugs." I call it learn to love the food that loves you. We know what food doesn't love us. Dairy did not love me. Sugar did not love me. Meat did not love me. Tab did not love me. I gave those things up and I feel better, stronger, healthier. My weight changed, my skin changed, my breathing changed, everything changed about me, finding a more plant-based and less chemical oriented diet. So, I think it's people are stuffing their faces, but starving their bodies, because if you eat bad food, your body's going to say, "Well, is there a nutrient in there? Keep eating, keep eating, keep eating till we find something that's going to work for us." So it's not always everybody's fault. It's so many other factors. And you just have to learn to love the food that loves you. And motion is the lotion. Motion is the lotion. You got to move every single day. You walk your dog, your cat stretches, you get a hamster wheel for your hamster. You've got to move. We're this beautiful human animal, and you give it the right things and it pays you back.
Well, you talk about moving. You've done a lot of theater lately. I'm surprised you don't live in New York.
I'm moving to New York. I'm getting my house ready to sell so that I can live in New York and in LA, like downsize, take this house and make it 2 houses, 2 places, because I love New York. But also I worked a lot because of the pandemic and also because of the strike. So yeah, and I love the pieces that I was working on.
So when you look back at your life and your career, which has been so prolific, is there one particular experience in your career that's brought you the most personal satisfaction?
Oh, well, Taxi is ridiculous. It's a gift that keeps on giving. And I love doing Chicago. I did Chicago 408 performances as Roxy. So that was great.
Weren't you the first person to play Roxy after Anne Reinking?
Yes. She thought I'd be a good replacement for her. And it's funny, my agent called me on March the 14th of 1997. And he said, it was a Friday, and he said, Anne Reinking thinks you'd be a great replacement for her in Chicago. What kind of dance shape are you in? And I thought, ooh. I haven't had my legs up over my head except for childbirth or a good weekend for 5 years. I said, but I'll go get myself back in class. So I grabbed my brother Lauren, and it was like, oil can. I said, we're going to go to a class. So we went to the class. But I got in shape, and I went and auditioned, and then they gave me 2 more weeks to get the Fosse into me, and I got the job.
I'm pretty sure I saw you in Chicago and Las Vegas.
Oh, that was a great experience. They had to drag me kicking and screaming. And my agent said, oh, let's have some fun with your quote. And then he called me and said, they made you an offer you can't refuse. You're going to Vegas. And they had to drag me kicking and screaming there. And then they had to drag me kicking and screaming away from Vegas because I had such an incredible summer. But the boys had to go to school. They were very young. So, yeah, Nikki was 5. Joey was 3.5, turning 4 almost. And so I just thought, okay, they have to go to school. So we had to quit.
Well, I'm really glad I got to see you. I have to tell you, Marilu, it's been such a pleasure meeting you and having this chance to chat with you. You know, it's very intimidating interviewing you because I know that 100 years from now, you're going to remember what you were doing on November the 18th, 2024.
You got it.
And I wanted the memory to be a pleasant one, not one that you have to process.
Yeah.
So I thank you so much for taking the time to appear on our show.
Thank you.
Our guest has been the incomparable and wonderful actress and author, Marilu Henner. My name is Harvey Brownstone. Thank you all for joining us. See you next time. Thank you to my producer, Steve Silver, my managers, Rick Marcelli and Robin Bragg Marcelli at the Marcelli Company in Hollywood, my director of programming, Robert Monaghan, my PR directors, Eileen Shapiro and Jimmy Starr, and my entire team at the XPTV1 network in the UK.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out all the great interviews on the Harvey Brownstone Interviews YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified when new videos are posted.